as I said in the intro to this section, this default view for daily times is based on any employee who has a flag of some sort. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just go through what those flags are, and there's different reasons for the flags to appear. So in our flag table, we have a variety of triangular flags. So the red flag is an indication that the employee was expected to work but didn't clock in or out. The blue triangle is an indication that the employee worked less hours than they were rostered to work. The orange triangle is an indication that the employee's clocked transactions don't match their rostered times. The green triangle tells us that there is no daily rule applied to that employee, which is very unlikely that you will see that. And the conflict of job and tags, again, very unlikely that you will see that particular one. So those two are more around our labour costing module. If the period involves a public holiday, you will see a calendar, purple calendar, which indicates that in that particular pay period or that particular date sequence there was a public holiday. We then move down. So all of these, sorry, before we move on, all of these triangular things will not stop you processing your pay. These are just flags or warnings to indicate that something has happened which is unexpected, and in some cases you should do something about it. The key one, for example, I would suggest is that the one where you get a red flag where someone has not clocked in or out, you need to address that because they may have been sick, they may have been on leave, or they may have just forgotten. But that's an important flag, and I'll show you in a second how to find these flags. The circles are more important because these are meaning that the day is in some way invalid. Typically, an invalid day will be this red circle, and it will mean that there are an uneven number of clocks. So the employee has clocked in and not out, or out and not in, or clocked three times. So they don't have even transactions, so we cannot calculate what the day looks like. If you have an employee with a red flag, you cannot process the final step through to the payroll because we need to fix that data. The blue flag is an indication that the employee was rostered to be on annual leave and through the roster calendar, which we covered earlier, and they've turned up to work and they've clocked. So Time Hub will indicate that you can't have it both ways. You're either on leave or you're not. And again, you would need to go in and address that. If you're using our labour costing module, then you could have one of these other flags, which is an indication that the job number wasn't entered by the employee when they clocked in, or they've entered a job number which isn't known to the system. Again, these are not relevant unless you are labour costing. And then the conflict of tags is another one which is related to the fact that you have tagged a day, which we'll cover in more depth, and that tag doesn't match what the employee has actually done. So those are the symbols, and if we go back to the first screen, so you can see them down here. If you hover over the symbols, that will tell you what they are and what they relate to and why they're there. If I drill in here, I can see each symbol for each employee, the employees that have those symbols. So there's the example of the red triangle. The employee has no clock times, whereas this one, the employee has the orange triangle because their clock times are outside. They're expected to work 5 hours, they've worked 7.5 hours. So that's an indication as to why. This is another one where the employee was expected to work 8.5 hours, has only worked 8, and so the hours are less than expected. Those don't matter so much, it's the circles that matter the most. So we'll come back in a second and just look at what we do with the data once we see this sort of thing happening.